Nach fast 20 Tagen auf der Internationalen Raumstation ist ESA-Projektastronaut Marcus Wandt sicher zurück auf der Erde. Marcus und seine AX-3-Kollegen flogen am 18. Januar zur ISS. Wandt führte während seiner Zeit an Bord fast 20 europäische Experimente durch und verbrachte mehr als 80 Stunden mit der Durchführung von Wissenschafts- und Technologieprojekten. Marcus Wandt und die AXOM-3-Kollegen hatten sich dann an diesem Mittwoch, dem 7. Februar, von Crew 7 auf der ISS verabschiedet. Darunter auch der ESA-Astronautenkollege und Kommandant Andreas Mogensen. Die Reise zurück zur Erde hat für die AX-3-Besatzung etwa 2 Tage gedauert. Marcus hatte während der Reise als Missionsspezialist fungiert und sich die Mission mit Walter Villadei aus Italien, Alper Gezeravcı aus der Türkei sowie Michael López-Alegría, einem US-amerikanischen und spanischen Doppelbürger, geteilt. Seht nun das Wiedereintrittsmanöver und die anschließende Wasserung. Nach einer Reihe von Zündungen zur Senkung der Umlaufbahn wird das Raumschiff in die Erdatmosphäre eintreten und seine Fallschirme danach für eine Wasserlandung öffnen. Marcus und seine Crew werden voraussichtlich dann vor der Küste von Florida, USA, wassern. Nachdem die Kapsel anschließend von einem Spezialschiff geborgen wurde, seht ihr ebenfalls den Ausstieg der Astronauten. Dieser markiert dann auch das Ende der Mission Munin. Wir wünschen euch nun eine interessante Unterhaltung.
Good morning and welcome to SpaceX and Axiom Space's splashdown coverage of AX-3, the third crewed mission to the International Space Station by Axiom Space. I'm Jesse Anderson, a manufacturing engineering manager here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California.
And I'm John Rackham, spacesuit ventilation lead for Axiom Space, based in Houston, Texas. With over 21 days in space, our crew spent just over 18 days aboard the International Space Station. And while on board, they experienced more than 288 orbits and covered over 7.6 million miles. And now we are in the final phase of their journey. Over the next hour, we will follow the return of Commander Michael López-Alegría, Walter Villadei, Alper Gezeravcı, and Marcus Wandt as they splash down off the coast of Florida and bring the operational phases of the AX-3 mission to a close.
Over the last 40 hours, Dragon has been moving into position for re-entry with downhill phasing burns, firings of Dragon's Draco thrusters to adjust the spacecraft's orbit in advance of returning to Earth. The next action coming up for Dragon will be to jettison the trunk, which is the cylindrical, unpressurized part of the spacecraft. Once the trunk is separated, Dragon will be running entirely on battery power. The trunk is currently connected to the aft or the bottom section of the Dragon capsule where the heat shield is located. From there, the spacecraft will use its forward Draco thrusters to perform a deorbit burn, which will last about 9 minutes, and put Dragon on a trajectory to return to Earth. This will be the last time that we use those forward bulkhead thrusters. After that, we will close and lock the nose cone in preparation for re-entry. During re-entry, as Dragon passes back into the Earth's atmosphere, we will have an expected loss of communication, sometimes referred to as an LOS, or loss of signal. And what you're seeing there on your screen is a view of mission control here in Hawthorne, California. And again, in just a few minutes, we will have claw separation, which will be shortly followed by trunk separation, just about a minute afterwards. And then a few minutes after trunk separation, we will begin a deorbit burn that will help bring the Dragon into an orbit that takes it down ready for the landing zone. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Dragon. It's about 27 feet tall. And you could see on your screen that the top portion is the capsule portion of the vehicle, and the bottom portion is the trunk section. That trunk section is the unpressurized portion of the vehicle, which we did just jettison a few moments ago. We no longer need the trunk there. You could see that the black portion of it, that is the solar arrays that provides power to the vehicle. But now that the vehicle is coming home, we are exposing, or have exposed, the heat shield, which is on the bottom of that capsule, and that helps protect the vehicle and the crew as it's re-entering back into the Earth's atmosphere. Yeah, this is always a great view, seeing the crew inside of the capsule live as they are making their journey back home to Earth. And again, this is an autonomous vehicle, so really they get to enjoy the ride. They do have those display panels right in front of them so that they can monitor, everything that's going on, each event that's happening. They're able to see and monitor those events there on that screen there that you're seeing.
Right.
But it is an autonomous vehicle, so most of this journey, I hope that they are relaxing a little bit.
And I think they are, Jesse. I think they're excited to get home. But you can see there, front and center, right, Commander López-Alegría and pilot Walter Villadei. They have pretty critical roles still to play on their trip home. But like you said, being an autonomous vehicle, really, they are there to help ensure that the vehicle is doing what it needs to do on its way home. It's a great view there over their shoulders of the displays that they're looking at to monitor their progress home and make those call downs to ground, like we talked about, to ensure that we're in the right phases of dynamic operations and help ground crews synchronize on where they're at in their day on Dragon.
Yeah, I think it is pretty amazing all the work that these crew members put into training for launch, for time on the International Space Station, as well as returning back home. And I think people forget that you're not just training for, the dynamic events of launch. You're also training for, the science that they're doing on the mission, and for the AX-3 crew, the outreach events that they're also doing throughout their mission. So it's not just, one portion of the training. They have to train on so many different things.
You're right. They're training for, like what you see here, right? They're training for capsule operations, for vehicle operations. They're training for their launch day, their landing day. They're training for the life on orbit. What I love about it, though, too, is it's a whole network of training. It's not just crew. It's also all those ground teams that we saw that staff those control centers. Each one of those flight controllers goes through a certification process. They train for this moment and for this mission as well. And together, that whole team and network knows exactly what to do throughout the mission. They're trained for nominal and off-nominal events. And it's an entire journey for both crew and ground teams to really successfully accomplish this mission. And AX-3 is a great example of that. They succeeded in accomplishing all of their mission objectives. And this is a great culmination to that effort.
Yeah, you make a great point. There are 4 crew members on Dragon, but they've brought a lot of people with them from Axiom Space, from
Dragon
SpaceX.
SpaceX, deorbit burn complete, performance nominal, nose cone closure is initiated.
Copy all, SpaceX.
And we just heard that call out that the deorbit burn is complete. In the background, Dragon is currently inhibiting those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete the deorbit burn, ensuring it's safe to latch the nose cone shut for re-entry. Also, the vehicle has initiated the nitrox suit purge. This will help keep the crew cool and comfortable during re-entry, which is coming up in just a few minutes. At this point, the nose cone is closing and protecting the forward hatch for re-entry. The crew is using their screens to monitor the locking of the nose cone, which is done by a set of hooks. And the crew, again, as we mentioned, they use those displays to monitor what's going on, but the vehicle is fully autonomous. Again, they don't really need to do anything or control anything. The vehicle is flying itself and completed those deorbit burns by itself, and now the nose cone is beginning to close, which will protect that forward bulkhead, and we no longer need to use those Draco thrusters anymore, so that nose cone will help keep the capsule protected as it's re-entering back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Right, and the nose cone really is another great example of that dynamic operation, a certain call out that we're waiting for to know that the vehicle is on a good path on its timeline to get back home. And at this point, we really are waiting for a bit more of those dynamic calls, all those teams on the ground that are expecting those calls, to kind of know where we're at in our timeline so that we are ready and positioned on the ground to retrieve crew.
Yeah, exactly. And in the next about 20 minutes, we will have that expected loss of signal or that loss of communication that we mentioned earlier. That will be about a 7-minute period while the vehicle is performing atmospheric re-entry. Again, this is normal. This is the plasma building up around the Dragon capsule. The plasma around the vehicle gets to about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really, really hot. Yeah. And as we mentioned, that the Dragon capsule is now beginning to flow that nitrox into the cabin and into their suits. That is to help keep them cool throughout that very hot period of time that's coming up in about 20 minutes or so.
Right. And Jesse, you keyed on a certain thing there that I think is really important to remember too. It's a nominal part of today's process, right? But it's a very critical aspect of it, a very important part. But like we talked about a few moments ago with training, it is an aspect of training to understand what a planned LOS is, and then to understand what do you do during that time. There's a lot of situational awareness that goes into when you're in a planned LOS like that, what are we doing to maintain awareness without that direct insight? And what are we looking for when we come back from that LOS or at AOS, acquisition of signal? And so leading up to an LOS, teams on the ground have trained for what are we looking for? What are we going to be executing during that time so that we know when we come back for that acquisition of signal, here's where we are and here's where we need to go next. And I love that aspect of it. I think it's a really important thing to remember that these things are planned. It happens on ISS. You have them every day and you plan around them. And it's an important part of the space flight. It's an important part of spaceflight, and specifically the journey home to remember.
And we've confirmed that the deorbit burn has completed. And the nose cone has also officially closed. So as we begin the second half of entry, Dragon is now beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continue to top off the AX-3 crew's suits with cool air. Again, this is what will allow the cabin temperature to remain comfortable while external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat shield is pointing forward, leading the capsule to the landing site. Crew Dragon's primary heat shield is comprised of PICA 3.0, which stands for Phenolic Impregnated Carbon Ablator. First generation PICA was first developed by NASA for studying and sampling comets with our solar system. SpaceX partnered with NASA to develop PICA X, which was the second generation product used on all Dragon 1 CRS missions that successfully resupplied the space station on 20 missions. Now, PICA 3.0 was developed specifically for use on Dragon 2 crew and cargo, with enhanced structural and thermal properties that optimized the heat shield and drove down cost and mass. The remainder of the Crew Dragon capsule is composed primarily of SpaceX proprietary ablative material. It's another class of thermal protection, which is lighter weight versus PICA and protects the underlying composite structure during reentry to ensure structural capabilities are maintained. While Crew Dragon will experience temperatures well over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit during peak re-entry conditions, the characteristics of the TPS or thermal protection systems, coupled with the ECLS or ECLS environmental control and life support system in the pressurized interior, will ensure that the AX-3 crew will stay cool and comfortable during all phases of re-entry through splashdown.
Now, missions like this are important, not just for the crew members who fly, but also for the host of scientists and engineers around the world who had an opportunity to have their research or their technology tested in microgravity. And for AXOM Space, this is at the heart of why we do these missions. We are building opportunities for others to advance what is possible and expand on what is known. So for MLA, Walter, Alper, and Marcus, this has been an incredibly successful mission. Just to highlight and recap a little bit, the crew conducted a total of 54 research-associated activities around the mission, both on ground and on ISS. Now, 36 of these were on-orbit experiments and tech demos. This also included a slew of life science biology projects, human research projects, plant-based projects, physical and earth science projects, and like I mentioned, technology demonstrations.
SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX.
Loud and clear as well. Expect automated chute deployment.
Copy, Arthur.
And we did hear that call out that we have confirmation of acquisition of signal, and you can see on your screen a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom. Now we're just about 3 minutes away from drogue parachute deployment. And there you can see a live view from the ground watching Dragon as it's making its way back down to Earth, which is a really awesome view there.
Yeah, this is a beautiful example of exactly what we were just talking about during the loss of comms phase. Upon acquisition of signal, we are looking for good comm checks with the crew, which we got, and visual confirmation of the vehicle, which we got.
Dragon SpaceX, GPS has converged. Expect nominal drogue deploy altitude.
Copy, SpaceX.
Good comms between the core and the crew. And again, we are just a couple minutes away from drogue parachutes deploying. And just under a minute after the drogue parachutes deploy, and currently you can see on your screen that they are reconfiguring their seats. So you can see that the seats are rotating down, and that is happening live right now in preparation for splashdown.
Yeah.
Brace for drogue window.
And looked like the seat rotation was completed, and now they are ready for those drogue parachutes to deploy. What you're seeing on your screen is a live view of the Dragon capsule returning back to Earth. And there you can see the drogue parachutes have deployed, and a cool view from the capsule itself. Shortly after, we should see the 4 main chutes deploy here.
Visual on 2 healthy drogues and descent rate nominal.
And excellent call-outs there.
You see the same, Arthur?
And we do have visual confirmation that the drogues have deployed. Now just waiting for the 4 main parachutes to deploy as well. And there you can see on your screen, 4 mains have deployed. They will begin to slowly open up and help slow the vehicle down. The vehicle is approximately moving at 119 miles per hour, and the main chutes deployed at 6,500 feet. And there's an awesome view from the capsule itself, looking up at the 4 main
Visual
chutes.
on 4 healthy mains and descent rate nominal.
Copy, we show ourselves at 1,000 meters.
Copy 1,000.
Got some good call-outs there. And just a few minutes away from the Axiom 3 crew splashing down back on Earth here.
SpaceX Dragon, 800 meters.
Copy 800.
And what you're hearing is call-outs of the ground and the crew on board, monitoring the altitude of the vehicle and the crew as they're making their way back down to Earth.
$600 meters.
600.
And we're just a couple minutes away from splashdown. Landing in water is simpler, therefore more reliable than landing on land. And there you can see an awesome view.
It's beautiful.
The Dragon capsule, Dragon Freedom, carrying AX-3 as it's
400.
slowly making its way to splashdown.
Now, these are absolutely fantastic views that we got at acquisition of signal, Jesse. It was incredible coming back from AOS to see those good comm checks, those good visual confirmations of the vehicle coming in, and then the visual confirmations of the first drogue chutes, which deployed beautifully, and followed by the main chutes. And additionally, we got to see crew even rotate their seats to prepare for splashdown. All of these are
200. Crew brace for splashdown.
Copy, braced for splashdown.
Splashdown.
Copy, splashdown. We are with you in 4.800.
Copy.
And an excellent sight to see. Welcome home, AX-3.
Arthur, all the observations from
As you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation of splashdown of the Dragon spacecraft. Dragon Freedom has returned home with the AX-3 crew.
Dragon SpaceX, can you repeat your last call? It cut out for post-splashdown observations.
nominal.
Copy, nominal.
Some excellent views of the Dragon capsule there. The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they will now begin to make their way to the splashdown
SpaceX
location.
confirm an environmental assessment is not necessary.
SpaceX confirms, not necessary.
Some good comms there. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes to make their way to our crew inside of Dragon. And once they do approach, they will do some quick safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the crew to egress the Dragon vehicle. Then they will begin to prepare the Dragon capsule to be lifted back on or onto the recovery ship, which they will then open the hatch and the crew can egress from the Dragon capsule. These are some great daytime views of Dragon splashdown. AX-3 crew still inside of the Dragon capsule, waiting for their recovery vessel Shannon and recovery crew to come pick them up.
Yeah, this has been an absolutely picture-perfect splashdown, and these views are really highlighting that. And it's not just beautiful, it's an essential tool for ensuring that we keep eyes on this Dragon, right? But you can't deny that being able to watch, get confirmation of parachute deploy, get visual confirmation of the vehicle coming in, and then seeing that landing, in addition to commander's calls down to crew, all painted a wonderful example of a lockstep splashdown day. And it's been absolutely fantastic. And you can see Dragon sitting there in the Atlantic with chutes deployed, and crew is comfortable and safe and healthy, and they are waiting now for Shannon to make first contact to begin the recovery operations. It can be, again, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of dynamic aspects over the next 30 minutes as crew makes their way, as ground crews make their way to Dragon, and then as they begin to prep Dragon for hoisting it into the vehicle.
And you could also see in the background, the camera has now tilted away, but you could see Shannon and two fast boats making their way towards the Dragon capsule, the recovery team on their way to help the crew.
Dragon SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in approximately 1 minute. And on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home. Thanks for flying SpaceX.
Flying SpaceX was our pleasure, and 1 minute to the recovery.
Speaking of fast boats, that was pretty fast. They're just about a minute away, and you can see them now there live on the screen, the fast boats approaching very quickly.
Yeah, and like you said, it was faster than anticipated, but it's an example of when you have teams prepped and you have you've done your homework to know where crew's coming back. It's an example of how AXIOM and SpaceX are ready to receive their crew back on land.
And you can see the recovery crew now getting close to approaching the Dragon Freedom spacecraft. Now, Dragon has already autonomously completed some of the safety inspections following splashdown, and now the recovery team will also perform a few safety checks just to make sure.
Dragon SpaceX request permission to come aboard via the display camera view only.
You're welcome to come aboard, Arthur, and just for your essay, all 4 crew members are feeling well.
SpaceX copies, great news.
Sounds like we might get a view inside of the Dragon capsule at our crew. And there you can see the recovery team reaching out to Dragon. They will actually climb onto the Dragon capsule, perform some safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the vehicle, for the crew members inside of the vehicle to egress, and then begin operations to prepare the capsule to be lifted back onto the, not back onto the recovery ship, but onto the recovery vessel once the recovery vessel is there.
Exactly right, Jesse. And with that call to the crew on Dragon, with a great live view there of inside the Dragon Freedom capsule, we heard MLA call that all 4 crew members are feeling good. They're feeling well, they're feeling healthy. So this is fantastic. That first fast boat made good initial contact and, like you mentioned, is ready to kind of press into the next phase of operations here as we pull that Dragon back into the recovery vessel. You can also see on your screen the second fast boat, which provides redundant support to the primary fast boat, which made initial contact. In addition to helping just keep that area secure, right? Redundancy is a key aspect of spaceflight operations, not only on ground and in orbit, but also during recovery. In addition to that recovery, they're also working on that parachute recovery. So we saw that Dragon had jettisoned its parachutes after deployment and after splashdown. And this fast boat, as well as another jet ski, are helping to recover that parachute to, again, keep that area secure to not inhibit any operations that are going to be underway while that primary fast boat's making contact and doing its work, but also while Shannon's coming up right behind them.
There's that jet ski passing by. Part of the recovery team. Mm-hmm. And again, what you're seeing here is a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, now splashed down on Earth. The recovery team is performing their recovery operations. Again, just waiting for them to perform some safety checks. We did get some good comms earlier that the crew is feeling good after splashdown. They had a pretty dynamic adventure this morning. And now hopefully get to relax a little bit while they're, waiting for the Dragon lift onto the recovery vehicle.
Right, dynamic, but completely according to plan. It was a beautiful execution of a splashdown day, and you can tell their crew is visors up. They're looking healthy and happy, and I think they're probably really looking forward to that first breath of fresh air.
If you're just now joining us, the AX-3 crew has returned from space after being in space for about 21 days. They undocked from the International Space Station a couple of days ago and are now back on Earth. The recovery crew, again, performing their recovery operations. These are standard procedures. They're currently making sure that the vehicle is safe. Then we should see one of the crew members hop on board the Dragon capsule and begin operations to prepare the capsule for lifting onto the recovery vessel.
This is an excellent side-by-side view showing on, basically this is still the dynamic phase of operations, right? Crews splash down, they're safe and healthy, their visors up. But at the same time, everybody still has a job to do. So on the right, you can still see crew inside the capsule looking over the shoulders of Commander Michael López-Alegría and pilot Walter Villadei as they monitor their vehicle systems and stay in contact with ground crews here, with core at SpaceX. And then on the left, you can see as the primary fast boat has made first contact, an initial contact with the Dragon Freedom after its splashdown coming in from space. And at this point, they are maintaining that contact and just ensuring that the area is safe, that the vehicle is safe to continue those hoisting operations. So I love being able to see these views side by side to help everybody maintain that awareness exactly of what's going on outside the vehicle, but also in.
There you can see on your screen that the recovery crew member there is doing some checks, some ordnance and hypergol checks at the moment. Again, making sure that the vehicle is safe to approach. Then they can climb onto the capsule, begin rigging operations, and prepare the vehicle to be lifted onto the recovery vessel. Today is Shannon. Shannon is making its way to the recovery zone here. But these fast boats, and we did see a jet ski also with the crew, make their way a little bit faster and get the recovery process started sooner until the recovery vessel makes its way to the landing zone. What you're seeing is a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, patiently waiting for their recovery operations. They've made their way back down to Earth, and the recovery team is working their standard procedures in preparation for lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel, and then eventually will egress the crew for the first time in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, we're waiting for those ordnance and hypergol checks to complete.
Dragon SpaceX, hypergol sweeps, and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rigging in progress. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Copy all, sir. Standing by.
And almost on call. That was an excellent call from crew to Dragon, saying that the hypergol checks are complete and the ordnance checks are complete, and they all completed nominal. So with that, we were able to proceed into the next phase of the dynamic operations, which allows rigging to begin so that we can hoist Dragon Freedom into Shannon. And we also heard there that crew will be having their PMC or private medical conference with SpaceX. With SpaceX Medical, and just checking in on crew. But as we reported earlier, or as MLA reported earlier, this crew's feeling healthy and happy to be home. Their visors are up, they are monitoring their systems, and over the next 25 minutes, we should be able to get them on board.
And there you can see on your screen our recovery vessel, Shannon, patiently waiting for the crew and capsule to be ready for lifting onto the recovery vessel. You can also see on Shannon, there is that landing pad there. That's because a helicopter is going to come and take the astronauts or the crew back to land. That's a much faster trip than, taking the recovery vessel all the way back to shore. So that's what that landing pad is for.
That's right. If you're just joining us, Axiom 3 crew has splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And at this point, we are waiting for that recovery, the recovery efforts to continue. SpaceX team has made first contact with the Dragon Freedom capsule and crew. Crew reported all nominal health checks. They're feeling good and excited to be home. And at this point, we are waiting for those rigging operations to continue to get Dragon onto Shannon, that recovery vessel, so that they can have their final medical checks and get on that helicopter, and get back home, get back to land.
Yeah, I'm sure the crew's pretty excited to be back home. Pretty excited to take a breath of fresh air, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Right, excited to be home after, the 3 weeks in orbit, right? 23 flight days, 21 days, 18 days aboard the International Space Station, where they accomplished a suite of activities.
Dragon SpaceX comm check on Dragon to ground public.
clear.
And Dragon, you're coming in choppy. We have pretty ready comm right now, so we're going to take some steps to reconfigure Dragon communications before we step into the PMC.
Copy, SpaceX.
Some comms between the core, the crew, operations and resources engineer to the crew. And what you're seeing on your screen is the recovery team, again, a crew member on the capsule, beginning rigging for preparation of lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel. And this is really great that we had a daytime splashdown. We're getting some really excellent views of all of these operations happening.
It's a beautiful early morning for splashdown. The weather's looking fantastic. The local environment is looking fantastic for crews to perform these operations, right? We mentioned earlier that this is really a safety critical aspect of the mission. And one that's important to note that we talked about training earlier too, and this aspect of the mission is something that these crews train for heavily. This fast boat recovery team, the entire recovery team efforts, all train for their specific roles in today's operations like this. And when the weather is playing nominally with you like this, it allows for that to execute quite well. And so we're able to see these teams really execute kind of a picture-perfect recovery effort. Rigging is going smoothly, and they're progressing well into it at this point, and we're waiting for those next steps to be able to hoist Dragon into Shannon.
Yeah, you mentioned, training for these operations. Throughout this entire mission, everybody's following standard procedures. The crew has tablets inside of the capsule with them where they can follow, their procedures, basically their instructions. And the recovery team does the same thing. Yeah. They're following very standard procedures, going step by step, and making sure that they perform every step carefully and having verification of each one of those steps. So while it may look like they're just doing their work, they're actually, following very specific instructions.
Exactly.
And again, what you're seeing on your screen is a recovery crew member on board of the Dragon capsule, rigging the vehicle in preparation for lifting onto or hoisting onto the recovery vessel. And honestly, the recovery team must be just as excited as the crew. They're going to be the first people
you're absolutely right.
that they get to see when they egress the Dragon capsule. So this is a really special, I'm sure the recovery crew, probably really enjoys their job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, to play such a pivotal role in these operations, right? Crew has been, from launch until now, they've been away from their friends and family and away from Earth. And to be that crew that helps greet them and ensure that they're safely brought in, right? Mm-hmm. Following the procedures, doing your job to make sure that this crew is getting safely brought out of the water and into the vehicle, and then be able to see them smile and see everybody smile at the end of it. It's got to be a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how exciting that must be. Again, a live view inside of the Dragon Freedom capsule with our crew members of the AX-3 crew. And there's a view of the recovery vessel. That is where the Dragon will be lifted out of the water and will sit in that little nest that you see there, that ring on the vessel.
I think it's a perfect name for holding a dragon. I think that was intentional,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Definitely.
But right, it's a great view that kind of, to me signifies what Shannon's role in this operation is, right? Right now it's sitting and waiting while making approach, while the primary contact team is ensuring that rigging is, executed properly, but then also verified and checked, as you mentioned, part of the procedures prior to performing the hoist operation to get Dragon into its comfortable nest. And at that point, we have additional crew members, like you said, that we're going to be very excited to get this Dragon on board. But it takes time, and we've got to go a little slow, because slow is smooth, and then smooth is fast, and that allows us to get crew on board.
Yeah, and once Dragon is in that nest, we saw that it was near the end of the ship. It will actually slide forward to position itself next to a platform, which will be level with the hatch. So when they open the hatch, the astronauts can egress comfortably out of the Dragon capsule there.
Excellent service. And that is a beautiful shot if you're just tuning in to see Shannon, the recovery vessel, SpaceX's recovery vessel in the Atlantic, ready to meet and greet and hoist the AX-3 crew upon their splashdown today off the coast of Florida.
And for those wondering what this landing pad is for, again, once the crew egresses the vehicle, they will, do some safety and health checks to make sure that the crew is healthy. But then they'll board a helicopter that's going to land on that landing pad that will take them back to land pretty quickly. So they've got some great service, as you mentioned.
And what's excellent about this view, too, is you can really see a lot of aspects of these operations kind of play out.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX. Copy.
Copy. We have you the same. We are transmitting through Shannon recovery vessel now, and with this, I'm going to try and set up the quick PMC with flight surgeon.
Okay, standing by.
I think what's amazing about this shot, Jesse, is it looks like it's all so simple. And the care and precision that has to go into this operation from all of the teams that you see, that you can't even see in this shot, that are supporting this type of operation, is amazing. To allow for that hydraulic lift now to come down and begin this hoisting operation. All of this was a very tightly choreographed dance to get us to this point, and it's really exciting to see us getting here to where we're about to hoist Dragon into the nest.
Yeah, exactly. It may look easy, but it is, a lot of training, a lot of effort, a lot of planning goes into these operations. And as you said, very exciting. The hydraulic lift is now down, and they will begin to start to lift the Dragon capsule here shortly. We'll lift the capsule onto the deck of the recovery vessel into the nest that you see there. That's that circular ring there on the deck. And again, once the Dragon capsule is seated.
Dragon, SpaceX, approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
We copy, SpaceX.
Good update there, just about 5 minutes away from lift. Again, once the capsule is in that nest on the deck, that nest will actually slide forward to put Dragon next to a platform that will make it much easier for the crew to egress the Dragon capsule.
Right, and once they egress, they'll be greeted by SpaceX and AXIOM medical professionals to just ensure that, hey, we just want to make sure you're doing okay, everything's going all right, do those first initial checks, and then at that point, crew is able to step out and take their first steps, too, for the first steps in a number of weeks.
Yeah, very, very exciting. Again, very cool that the crew on board this recovery vessel gets to be the first to greet the crew after they've been in space for a few weeks.
Dragon SpaceX, brace for capsule lift.
Bracing.
And a nice big jump into the ocean for the recovery crew, completing their rigging operations. And Dragon Freedom being lifted onto recovery vessel Shannon. I love that they mentioned to brace for the lift.
Yeah.
You could see that the vehicle is moving and swaying a little bit,
Yep.
but I'm sure it was nothing compared to reentry.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Crew's had a lot of dynamic operations associated with today, and this is one of the final ones. There's a few more that have to go into play before they're back on land. But this moment of getting them finally back out of the water and into this nest situated while they're comfortable is a wonderful moment for the AX-3 crew.
And a great choreographed lift there. Gently setting down the Dragon capsule onto the nest.
It's important for this point, too, right after that lift, to kind of orient it just right so that it's ready for that translation maneuver you talked about, while also ensuring that, crew is staying in a comfortable, well-oriented position so that egress operations are as smooth as they can be.
Yeah, this gives you a good view of that hatch that the crew is going to egress from. You can see that it's pretty much in the middle of the capsule, so moving it towards the platform, that platform will be just at the bottom of that hatch. And that hatch has been closed since they left Earth.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
SpaceX Dragon, we copy.
Good calls there between Core and Commander López-Alegría to confirm that that we are preparing to press into the egress phase of today's operations. But yeah, Jesse, you mentioned that side hatch that they'll be coming out of hasn't been opened in a number of weeks, and that's because when they're on orbit, right, they're using the hatch that's under that nose cone, the docking hatch, to translate between their vehicle and ISS. So once they close that door on launch day, it doesn't open until today.
And I'm sure the crew is very excited for that side hatch to open.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We did hear some comms talking about this, but the recovery crew there is doing some last safety checks, now that the vehicle is on the deck of the recovery vessel prior to the translation motion of moving the capsule towards the egress platform. And a good view inside of Dragon. We have the commander on the left-hand side, pilot on the right-hand side. You can see the displays there.
Dragon SpaceX, ground team is making final preps for hatch open. Stand by for side hatch opening.
Standing by.
And you can see those displays. Right behind that display is the hatch, and that is what the crew is looking at. So as soon as that side hatch opens, the crew will be able to see the recovery crew and the medical crew there waiting there for them.
Right, and these are those initial checks that we talked about. The first people that the crew is greeted by is by the medical teams to just ensure that they're doing well after their flight and after their return home, and they'll make some medical assessments and make sure they're okay. And at that point, crew is egressing the vehicle and onto that helicopter ride back home. And there is the hatch opening. Welcome home, crew of AX3.
Now that that side hatch is open, they are going to put a protective tool there to ensure that the crew is safe when they egress the vehicle. And their first human interaction with someone from Earth in the last 3 weeks.
It's a great example of even in this moment, right? The hatch is opened, crew is ready to get out. We're still taking our time to make sure that they're okay, that everything on board is as it should be, and at that point we'll begin crew one by one, leaving their Dragon Freedom vehicle.
And this again is a standard procedure. Even when they're getting up out of their seats, it's very important that they are very careful. They've been in space for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so the crew there will also, help them if the crew needs help, make sure that they're healthy and safe as they're egressing through that side hatch.
Exactly. It can be, a little bit different when you've been in space for a few days.
Yeah,
experiencing microgravity. So exactly right. That type of assistance, if needed, is there and able to be provided as support. That is an amazing view of the AX-3 crew waving, smiling, of course, as they have been since launch day on January 18th.
Some great waves. You can see their very excited faces there. That was awesome.
That was a wonderful shot. That was a wonderful shot. Getting thumbs up there between ground crews and commander. Now, as you mentioned earlier, this is MLA's second trip on the AX on Crew Dragon for an AXIOM mission. So he's aware of this process and this procedure. I'm sure he's telling his crew, "Hey guys, we're going to take our time." And it looks like they are ready to proceed with egress.
Yes, you could see MLA removing his harness. Again, frequent flyer, as you've mentioned, our first frequent flyer on Dragon. Super exciting.
Maybe he'll get to put a sticker on the inside of the capsule.
And you can see there that they've installed basically a protective tool around the hatch, the side hatch, as well as a little bit of a ramp there so that the crew can safely egress. They are still in their suits and also need to protect the suits themselves. So we will make sure that the suits do not get damaged as they're egressing. You'll see that the recovery crew there will help them exit, may put their hand over their helmet just to make sure that they don't bump their head. And there's a few people there to help them, which is great.
Right, and like we mentioned, this is their first moment back on Earth, and in 23 days, gravity is going to be a familiar but reminder of an experience. And so, coming out of this hatch, it's it may seem and look simple, but there are some nuances associated with it, with wearing that suit that you want to protect for, with also protecting for just your mobility coming back from this mission with its mission duration. You certainly want to be aware of their first time back in gravity in a while. So all of those translation aids really help ensure that when they're getting out of the vehicle, they're doing it as safely as possible, but also as comfortably as we can let them.
Yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned, the side hatch is open, but they're not running out of their seats, right? They're taking, it is step by step, removing the harnesses. They did remove some of the feet rests at the bottom of their seats. All of these things to make it easier for them to exit the vehicle.
Right, because at the end of the day with all of this, you want to make sure that you're comfortably getting out of the vehicle. And we saw there ground crews reminding crew, hey, just might want to close that visor just to be safe.
And to watch their head as they're getting out of their seat.
Exactly. Yeah. And we see the pilot making his way out of his seat and about to egress the vehicle. So Walter Villadei will be taking his first steps in 23 days on Earth. And we can see Walter coming out of Dragon, having some assistance from ground crews. Visor up.
Awesome.
And I do think I see a smile on that face. And a wave. A wave and a thumbs up. Walter is feeling good.
Welcome home, Walter Villadei. If you're just now joining us, we are watching the live egress of the AXIOM 3 crew. And you can see that Marcus Wandt, our mission specialist coming out of seat 4, is getting ready to egress the Dragon Freedom capsule.
This will be Marcus's first steps in gravity in 23 flight days, 21 days in space, and 18 days aboard the International Space Station. So we're taking our time and making sure that he is comfortable and making sure that he's going to be safely egressing the vehicle. Welcome home, Marcus. And again, visor up, and I think, of course, we're going to see Marcus smiling. Yeah, we are. Okay.
There we go. Some waves.
He's giving his wave. Marcus is feeling good. This is excellent to see. The crew's going to assist as we take those first steps back in gravity. And our third egress of the day, we have Alper Gezeravcı, the first Turkish astronaut to fly to space. Alper is looking good. He's excited. He's excited. He's ecstatic. He's happy to be home. He's giving excellent smiles and a great fist bump there. I love to see that.
And last but definitely not least, our frequent flyer, Commander Michael López-Alegría.
And even with that frequent flyer card, MLA is no stranger to this maneuver, but he is also taking his time, and he is looking good. And welcome back, MLA. Excellent. It is wonderful to see all 4 crew members of AX3 egress comfortably and safely out of the Dragon Freedom that they've spent their time in for the last 2 days, certainly, but also just a number of days on this mission. But they're looking good, they're looking healthy, and it was wonderful to see. So.
Well, now that our crew are safely back home on Earth and getting the first checks by SpaceX and Axiom Space medical teams, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. AX3 lifted off from launch pad 39A on Thursday, January 18th, and arrived at station 36 hours later. They spent over 21 days in space, 18 of those days on the International Space Station before undocking just over 2 days ago. And this morning at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, they splashed down off the coast of Daytona, Florida.
And it has been an amazing journey. So once their first medical checks are complete, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore, where they will transfer to a waiting aircraft ready to take them to Houston. While this concludes the flight portion of the AX3 mission, much of the research portfolios that were performed on station will continue to be reviewed and analyzed over the coming weeks. So some of their studies will even continue over the coming days and months. So Jesse, it's been an amazing time spending this desk with you from undock all the way through splashdown. It's been an absolute honor, so thank you very much. And to SpaceX, thank you for an incredible flight and taking such great care of our crew as we saw today and throughout the entire mission. To NASA and all the International Space Station partners who have enabled access to the orbiting laboratory and made the efforts of AXIOM Space, Italy, Turkey, and ESA possible, thank you. We look forward to collaborating with you again soon with AX4. And all of you watching, it's been an honor and a privilege to share the journey of MLA, Walter, Alper, and Marcus to space and back again. So as we bring this mission to a close, we celebrate how the AX3 mission continues to demonstrate that the opportunities presented in microgravity have grown to include more countries, more institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. So through missions like this, we are redefining the pathway to low Earth orbit and building for beyond. So be sure to check out axiomspace.com to learn more about flight opportunities available along our journey to the world's first International Space Station. I'm John Rackham, and we're signing off now with a welcome home to the crew of AX3.
And I'm Jessie Anderson. Thanks to everyone for joining us on another successful mission to the International Space Station.
Jeder Tag ein neuer Blick auf die Welt. Nachrichten und Livestreams Tag und Nacht. Dein Kanal für einen klaren Blick. Wir zeigen alles, was du wissen musst. So funktioniert die Welt. Wir halten dich auf dem Laufenden. Mit Nachrichten rund um die Uhr. Blick auf die Welt. Hier bei uns.